Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I am Mohit Davar, Chairman of IAMTN. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome Elizabeth, CEO and founder of As a Finance, formerly BitPesa. Welcome, Elizabeth. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me so much, Mohit.
No, my pleasure. I wish we were doing this face-to-face rather than the new Zoom lifestyle, but this is still better. Well, look, we have so much to cover, as I think you've had an amazing journey, and I know I'm really curious. We've touched on some of those things, but I know everybody's really curious to listen about it. I mean, you live in Nairobi, I guess between Nairobi and London now, speak 5 languages, I think have 3 kids, if I'm right, co-chair the World Economic Forum Council on Blockchain. You served as a World Economic Forum Technology Pioneer for 2019, I believe. You participated in the Digital Currency Governance Committee, and recently was named the 2021 Bloomberg New Economy Catalyst. But the thing that I found most interesting when I read all of this was that you still make sure that everybody meets their deadlines.
Yeah, you made me sound a little bit busy there, I guess so.
And I was particularly curious. I hope you're impressed with our massive research department of one at IAMTN. So. But no, so let's start, Elizabeth. I mean, given that background, I'm particularly interested, you know, in your, before BitPesa as a finance, the journey. I mean, how do you get from Colombia to Africa? That's quite a leap. Would love to hear from you.
Sure. And thanks for having me. I mean, it's rare that you get time to really talk about the impetus behind the drive and the journey. And, you know, 8 years in, a lot of what I do now and a lot of what I think about and is coaching and mentoring my own team and really helping them reach a high level of performance for a period of endurance, right? I mean, that's what building a company is about. You know, at first it was, can we get this company off the ground? Then it's, can we get it to startup? Then we can get it to growth. Now, how do we go from here? So it's really about endurance and not just performance, but endurance performance. So, you know, when you think about that, what drives leaders and what drives me? And, you know, you said, how do I get from Colombia to Africa? But I grew up in a very humble neighborhood in South Queens, New York City. And my journey from South Queens to Colombia probably felt further than from Colombia to Nairobi. And, you know, yes, I've been in the UK the last 19 months through lockdown, and I've learned a little bit about socioeconomic movement in the UK, but even in New York City in the 80s, it was quite difficult. And, you know, I'm from a 2nd generation family. I'm not a 1st generation immigrant, 2nd generation, but there was still a huge divide. And luckily my parents are teachers, educators. They themselves came a long way. You know, my grandparents worked in factories and my dad grew up very humble beginnings, and it was all about education. And luckily in New York City, there's great free education. So if your parents have enough tiger in them, they can push you to these specialized programs where you can really achieve things above and beyond where you're from. And that was my path. And I always went to these really cool little programs. Even in elementary school, I was in a special program where my teacher took me into Manhattan once a month to the museum to see modern dance, to learn about technology. We were the first elementary school in New York City to have a Mac. Can you believe that? Wow. And we used Pages or PageMaker, I think it was, and we connected with the NASA space team. So we had laser discs in our classroom. Remember those? Yeah. So, you know, I was really lucky that technology was introduced to me at a very early age, and all because my teacher wrote grants and she was really good at what she did. So, you know, I'm thankful for those people that showed me things beyond my borders, and it really makes you believe that anything is possible. And I think that's where the journey begins. And I traveled, my daughter now is about to go into the next level of schooling here. And I'm telling her I traveled 90 minutes each way to school. She walks around the corner right now.
Right.
And I'm like that mother that's like, don't you forget where you came from, you know? So, I mean, that alone, it's like taking you into another planet when you get on a bus, a train, another train, and another bus to get to school, and you're, you know, 11. And so it keeps you humble. And you know, I'm that same person when I'm in Davos and I'm speaking to the Bank of England governor, and I'm presenting to Dan Schulman of PayPal. You know, I'm still that same girl that traveled that distance. And I think about my parents that pushed me, and I think about myself that pushed me. And, you know, that's that really helps me on my journey.
No, that's great. And so tell me, how did you end up in Africa? What brought you to Africa? Because I think you had a stint through United Nations as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, since I was always what I call like a traveler, even though it was just, you know, from one borough to another of New York City, I was really into languages. And, you know, I guess I have an ear for it. I'm not a great singer, so I don't know what happens, but I'm very good with languages. So I studied German at an early age. We were in the last program in New York City that offered German in public schools. So, you know, I got into this little program, and then I was taking classes at university, even in high school. And then in university, I graduated early because I was a little nerd. And it took me to go to the German parliament when I was 19. And I was there at the outbreak of the Iraq War, when everybody was like, look at what Bush is doing and look at what, you know, America's doing. And it was like eyes open, you know, even in New York, which is quite liberal, you don't see pictures of war in the newspaper, or you didn't then. And it was the first time I saw things that I didn't know were being hidden from me in the US. And, you know, not to sound radical. And it was the first time I was exposed to a lot of new ideas. And I was doing it all in a foreign language. And for me, that was just so important. How do you cope in a place where you are surrounded by people who are not like you? How do you communicate with them? How do you relate to them? How do you perform when everybody around you has a huge competitive advantage of being from that place, having understood that language? It just makes you very resilient and makes you think, well, what am I adding to the table? How do I, as an American who is learning German and working in the parliament, what do I bring here? Perspective. So I felt very comfortable being the other. And I went back to Colombia for graduate school, and I was, you know, the youngest there at the School of International Affairs. And I met a lot of people who were working in Africa and Asia, and, you know, they were going to all these refugee camps, but I had my mind set on finance. I thought like that was, as an immigrant, you know, I already forego medical and law school. My parents were like, your last option is finance. You should have been a lawyer, should have been a doctor. So I thought, no, I'm going to go into finance in Europe. Maybe I'll go into like economics. And I met a lot of people who are working in Africa, who are working in Southeast Asia. And I thought, you know, I had read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And I thought as a kid, and I thought, you know, Africa doesn't need me. They don't need white colonialists to re-enter and like, you know, bring ourselves there. Like Africa doesn't need Elizabeth, you know, so why don't I just stay away and not like go there? So I felt very strongly about that. But Muhammad Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize for microfinance. And I was getting fed up with working in finance in Europe. I worked at Goldman, I worked at Credit Suisse. The markets were collapsing. I was making money, but I was really troubled with the work style I saw. And you know, it was really gross at a lot of the banks about how they treated women, how they treated each other, how they treated clients. And I was like, this is what I've been hustling for. I'm here at the pinnacle. I made it to the parliament. I made it to Goldman Sachs, FIG. This is what I've been hustling and dreaming of. You know, maybe those kids in grad school had something about it, right, where they were thinking about going somewhere else. So I started looking outside finance or outside traditional finance. And I found a job in microfinance in 2009. And I thought I was going to go to Asia, and they sent me to Nairobi. And so I came down there. Here I was, this like white girl going to Africa, just like I said I would never do.
Right.
It was just so humbling, and life really began. You know, I don't think I learned anything until I got to Nairobi.
Right.
And then I really learned what it was like to operate outside your comfort zone. And when, you know, you are a foreigner in foreign land and you have to come on your knees. You don't deserve to be there. Why are you here? What are you bringing here that a Kenyan can't do? So I think it was really humbling time for me, and I rebuilt what I knew, and it was a really exciting time. And then that started a 10-year career.
So not only did you not become a lawyer, you didn't become a doctor, and you ended up in Africa. I'm sure your parents were really glad when you told them about
I will never
that.
forget. My dad's speech to me was, you don't go down on the salary scale. There's only one direction to go. Like, you don't give up your Black Amex card and make less money. I remember it so vividly. He like couldn't fathom this, you know. He's like, no, I grew up in the projects and now I drive a BMW. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to give up my BMW.
Right.
And I was like, well, Dad, that's what people do these days, materialism, try to explain that to like immigrant parents. But
No, I'm sure he's changed his views given what a success you've built. So
yeah,
I'm sure that's different. So 2009, Africa, Nairobi. I think you launched, am I right, BitPesa in 2013 or thereabouts? So what was the sort of that 4-year period, and what was the trigger point that said, I mean, why remittances?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it was so interesting because I didn't know anything about microfinance when I took this job, but I knew how to work hard. I knew a lot about being analytical. I had worked in forensic accounting to make money during college. So I had worked for a lot of nerdy economic consulting jobs. And I was like very excited to dive in. And the job that I had was one financial institution a month. And it was in Uganda. My first one was in Uganda. Then it was in Malawi. Then it was in Nigeria. Then it was back in Kenya. And so very quickly, when you're doing that kind of intense analysis of these institutions, one after another, the data points start to gather on the chart and the scatter plot starts to grow and you start to see a lot of trends. And it's so important to do field work when you're getting into a new sector or a new geography. It's so important to be on the ground because there's a lot of people at the top reading regurgitated research, but to be able to write the research, to be able to create that firsthand was a gift. It was insanely hard. I'd be in South Sudan working with an institution and then, trying to relate that to my work in Ghana, but there was a lot of similarities. And the most important thing that I kept writing about was the funding of these institutions. And every CEO of every institution was like, how do we raise funds to then on lend? There was a lot about operations that I learned, a lot about technology implementation, a lot about team building, a lot about risk reporting, all that stuff, which I love. But one of the really important thing was, where is the money coming from for this whole sector? And it was still so, colonialism was like coming from the dollars and euro, from the World Bank, from the DFID, from the Germans, from the Swedish, and they're lending in euro, in dollar. And I'll never forget, like maybe the 10th rating I did, this like Ugandan institution, great team, great operations. And he's like, we're not going to get caught offhand this time and miss a payment. We're keeping the euro in a euro account. And I was like, you're paying 13%. You have to use that euro to quadruple the take rate on that and to be able to repay it. And it was just wild to me. And then, when I said, where is the local market? Where is the local currency lending? Where are the local currency products? They just were non-existent. So I was writing a lot about that. And then when you think about where is the incoming foreign currency coming from, it's from remittances. And why do those billions of dollars, $34 billion of remittances that come in, why don't they make more liquidity for the needs of the local market? Who is capturing those? And then you start to learn about the dirty stuff, which is that a lot of the remittances are captured, let's call it, by either monopolies or governments and kind of pushed to the side. And they're not matched. They're not met with local needs. They're not met by local financial institutions, by local corporates, by local businesses, by individuals. They can't really access that. So you don't have a healthy buy-sell market. You don't have a situation where in Europe you have inbound, outbound matching, or in New York, it's like all the inbound is kept to the side and then the outbound is left in a queue. So I was thinking a lot about that. And in fact, as you know, there's a lot of informal market making and informal matching. So I was informally on the side doing that with friends and myself. I had, my bank accounts from when I worked in Europe. I had a US account and people would say, hey, I'm buying a car. Do you have any shilling and I could pay you in the US? And I'd say, oh, I have a student loan payment. Sure. Or someone would say, oh, I'm moving back to Germany. Can I use your German Euro account and I'll pay you locally? I'll pay your rent in advance. There was a lot of that going on. And it just started to be like, how do we do this at scale? How do I start to provide the liquidity in that market? So I think it really came about organically.
No, that's great. It's amazing how most successful business and ideas are sort of from personal experience, and that's really interesting. Elizabeth, let's talk about you as a leader. I mean, how would you define your leadership style? I mean, you talk now that you're obviously mentoring a lot of the new people in the existing? I mean, how would you define yourself as a leader?
Well, I'm evolving. I aim for constant evolution, right? I'm not the same leader today that I was when I started.
Sure.
Absolutely not. You know, I've been humbled 100 times and I have 100 more humblings ahead of me. I aim for servant leadership. On a good day, maybe I get a little bit of the way there. I learn from a lot of people around me who have a lot less, and who do a lot more. So I'm looking to do the opposite of what I saw in banking. That's basically, if I had one sentence, I'm looking to create a completely different kinds of work environment. And to do that requires a completely different style of leadership. And so I really look to connect with and communicate with my team. And again, I can't shake the fact that I'm a high performer and have been since probably the day I was born. And I'm born into a family of high performers. I would like to say I'm a loving tiger mom, and I'm a loving tiger leader. And I try to be empathetic and I try to be fair. And I saw a lot of ugliness in banking, and I saw a lot of ugliness between the expat and local community when I came to Kenya. I saw a lot of people underpay Kenyans. I saw a lot of people underpay their nanny, their driver, their intern, their analyst, their accountant, their partner. And I saw a lot of Kenyans do that. Upper class Kenyans do that to lower class Kenyans. American expats do that to Kenyans. It was just gross. I just didn't know about that inequity because I had never had money before. I was always at the bottom. So I never really knew how people acted. And I was really grossed out. I was really grossed out by a lot of it. And I keep that really at heart. And I think about, how do we perform? How do we reward? But how do we break out of this idea of haves and haves nots? And I don't mean to say that in a socialist way, but I don't think that a CEO should be making 1,000 times more than an analyst. And I don't think a head trader in Kenya should be making, less than 10 times what a trader in the UK makes.
Right.
Or there's cost of living, but you shouldn't be driving a BMW in the UK and barely able to afford a car in Kenya. And what I heard a lot from investors, even investors that were investing in Africa, and what I heard from a lot of the leaders is, but that's the going rate. Well, the going rate isn't fair. The going rate impoverishes people. The going rate doesn't reward females equitably. The going rate doesn't reward people who don't come from the upper class. So the going rate is wrong. What's our rate, and I don't want to be outrageous. I'm not, a prince gifting people with money they don't deserve, but I really try to think about how I would want to be treated and how to correct some of the things that are inequitable.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's amazing how, where you come from, what passport you hold seems to drive your salaries. Two people having two different passports could get two very different salaries, but doing the same job, which just doesn't make any sense. You seem, Elizabeth, like a real sort of person who wants to be with people, with the team, drive from the front. I mean, how, as the business has grown and you've got, obviously staff has spread out globally, and now with COVID, we're all kind of learning to do this. Has that been challenging? How have you adapted to that new norm, I guess?
Well, for one, yes, I'm a person that connects easily. I talk to every waiter and bus driver I've ever met in my entire life. I give my phone number to Uber drivers all the time, much to the chagrin of my friends and family. But yes, I like to connect with people. That's essential, I think. And as a leader, you need people to follow, right? If you're a leader, they have to be following your vision, and they have to feel confident that you're taking them to a place of safety and a place of performance and a place of learning. So 100%, that's important, and you can't forget it. And even on the days when it's too much and I want to go hide in a closet, you have to give a little bit of yourself. So again, it's an endurance sport. How do you replenish that? And how do you really remember what your role is? And I say to my hiring managers and my executive team, when they have trouble with their team or a retention issue or something, I say, you need to woo them. The team needs to really want to follow you to the next level. Not only are they there for a job and they rock up like it's a supermarket, and they're a cashier, they're coming here with passion. And, you don't want them to, be devoted like religiously, but they want them to enjoy and feel passionate while they're there. And that means letting them go home. That means rewarding them. That means if they have a weekend of intense work, they have another weekend where it's not intense work. And I'm not saying, put your feet up and, take 15 weeks vacation French style, but I think it's also just about that important level of high performance balance. And I was always sitting next to everybody, going to lunch with the receptionist, and then also the senior head of compliance. And that was something that I did, and I was traveling a lot to do that. But again, our office was always split. As soon as we opened in Kenya, we very quickly opened in Nigeria 2 years later, and then in the UK. So I was always remote from somebody, although I was trying to be as present as possible in the different offices. And I moved my family from East Africa to West Africa, first to Nigeria and then to Dakar, to be close to those offices when they opened. That meant that I was then not close to the team in Kenya anymore. I would see them for a few months a year, but back. So we always had this remote communication, and we are a distributed team in a lot of ways. We're across three continents. So it's part of our DNA, and maybe the personality shines through. So, I go extra hard to tell people special messages on Slack, or make sure that I'm paying very close attention to a presentation and I'm present, and I make comments on what their work is. I always say to my kids, they don't do their work if the teacher doesn't check it. So, if someone sends you a presentation, read it, comment on it, show them that their work is valid. And you could do that over Zoom. You could do that at 11 p.m. when your kids are in bed for 5 minutes. All it takes is, a little bit of attention, and people respond to that.
That's a lot to manage, though. Are you able to, I'm hopeless rather at this, but are you able to manage, 3 kids and all these work commitments? That's surely got to be draining, unless you just don't sleep at all, Elizabeth. So
well, I'm a woman, so no offense, but I'm able to manage.
I set myself up for that, didn't I?
It's part of my DNA. I will not say the name, went to lunch with a male founder who I know very well. We came up in the same space, and he's like, I can't imagine that you would spend time with your kids. And I was like, what do you mean? Who else would? Of course, I read to them every night. Like, I have them on a tutoring plan. Like, we have all these games we play. I make them pancakes. And his eyes were just like, what? And I was like, well, who does that for you? And he's like, my wife. And I said, well, I am the wife. Or, so like that, both of those things are my job. And, to be honest, I did a study of this in a class I took in college, which is like, if you have 9 hours to clean the house, you clean the house in 9 hours. If you have 25 minutes to clean the house, you clean the house in 20 minutes. My favorite TV show of all time is this show called 30-Minute Meals, where the woman does like this huge feast in 29 minutes. And by the end, she's like really racing. That's me. I cook a meal in 30 minutes that would take other people 4 hours. In fact, I'm famous for cooking Thanksgiving in an afternoon, by myself. So,
wow.
Just operate. Am I tired? Yes. Do I go to the gym as much as I want? No. Do I see all my friends every weekend? Hell no. But no. I'm present for my kids. They speak with New York accents, even though they've never lived in New York. And they've had like nannies from all over the world, but they speak with a Queen's accent, and not the British Queen.
Well, that's great. You touched on something which, a lot of things which resonate with me. I remember, when I was running remittance companies, everywhere I would land, I'd speak to the waiters, the taxi drivers. And also you got such great feedback on your service that, within about 5 minutes, they'd tell you everything that was right or wrong. I find that, we have a lot of experts in the remittance industry now, but I just find that people are so focused on technology, and we seem to be ramming solutions down the customer's throat, and really people are not spending enough time with the migrants themselves. And I wonder whether, what are your thoughts on that? And also, I guess, being a migrant yourself, maybe that has helped you. Like, it certainly helped me to have that connection with the customer.
Yeah. Well, one, I use the product. So now our business is a B2B business. My customers are the remittance customers, right? That's what we're talking. So I'm a service provider for all the MTOs. I have, I think, 36 of them now on our platform. So I use the best ones. I'm not going to tell which customer's product I use, but I still have to send money back to all my old nannies who I pay all the school fees for. And, old, people that I used to employ in Kenya, I send them back all the time. I pay taxes. So I'm constantly sending remittances to Kenya and Senegal. And I use the products myself, number one. Number two, we always have this jokey story where we're in Tokyo for a night out. And, I'm with like these young guys on my team, and they want to go party. And if you've ever been to downtown Tokyo, a lot of Nigerians selling you tickets to like nightclubs.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, let's go to the nightclub. And I'm like, 1 second, when do you send money home? How much?
Yeah.
Which app do you use? And they're like, Elizabeth, we're having a night out. I'm like, 1 more second, Olamide, how do you like, gonna take a photo with you? And like, they're like, can you ever just, go out? But it's
Yeah.
true. I'm like, wow, a Nigerian diaspora in Tokyo, so interesting. Where does this diaspora look like? And the questions I ask are not just, do you send money home? What app do you use? I always say, what phone are you using? And how often do you use your phone? And are you on Wi-Fi? Do you have your own card? What does your internet connectivity look like? Do you use different apps? Because for me, it's about technology absorption, which is exactly what you related to. Not exactly just the app, but that's been the best part of this. Because, when I was first in Kenya, M-Pesa was just being introduced, and it was SIM-based, right? It's based off, we talked about this together at lunch. It's analog almost. It's connected to the SIM. And now so many of the apps are web-based.
Right.
And that's only possible because of the advent of fast internet and all across the continent. And you've seen grandmas. My old nanny, Milliam Tala, she never had health care. She had 3 kids without health care, anything, never saw a doctor. And this woman is sending me memes, she's like, sends me a meme every day. She's using 2 different phones. She's, her written English is terrible, but she's all over the place. Her capacity to absorb technology is incredible. Yeah. She's better than me, in a lot of ways. So I think we can't underestimate that. And I think a lot of people do. The level of the speed of technology absorption and the velocity on which people can learn about technology and continue to absorb technology is much, much more, the curve is much steeper than even financial literacy.
Right.
Which is something we used to study in microfinance and in financial deepening. We talk about how fast can people learn more about financial literacy? How fast can they absorb larger loans or larger loan products or get more business acumen? And what we've seen is technology absorption is a steeper curve.
Yeah, I think we always underestimate the resilience of this group as well. And we've seen that in COVID, just how acceleration in terms of digital adoption. By the way, I think that nightclub area in Japan is Roppongi, if my memory serves me.
Yes, definitely.
We probably, but that's a different interview. Elizabeth.
I'm no fun. I'm always like talking to the bouncers and the security guards.
Well, and they do stick out in that area, as you know. So, but that's funny. You mentioned lunch. I recall over lunch, you told me this great story of how very early on you got invited to Richard Branson's Necker Islands and how that was such a changing event. And I would love to hear if you could share that.
Yeah. Well, when we first launched, my co-founder and I, or even before my co-founder, I convinced her to join us a couple months before that. I was the first person to launch a product that sold Bitcoin and connected it to mobile money in Africa. That was October of 2013. And right away, I think in November, when the price was going to 1,000, I had a friend write a Bloomberg article about me. A girl who was leading the Bloomberg desk did me a favor, a mom friend. And that article went viral. And she's like, this was supposed to be a favor. This is my most clicked article. And I was like, yeah, I'm not just some like lame mom with a stupid idea. And through that article, some cryptocurrency leaders, so Bitcoin leaders at the time, Barry Silbert, who now runs Digital Currency Group, one of the largest conglomerates of digital currency, found me on LinkedIn. His brother found me on LinkedIn and connected to me. And that was really the sell-in minesweeper where everything opens up. He then introduced me to Charles Hoskinson. He introduced me to Brock Pierce, who at the time was very prominent. It led to me doing a $1.5 million pre-series A seed round. It led me to all of the future connections I had. Everybody was like, Elizabeth is our woman on the continent and she's doing this there. And I introduced them to Luno, so it was really amazing to be the first ever at something. My kids are really excited about that. Like, Mom, tell them how you were the first ever at something, and that's just a special thing and a special time. And because of that, I got invited to these events that were happening globally. And there was a lot of money from the early crypto days, and they flew me over. And, out of Nairobi in my mom clothes, I go to Necker Island. I meet all of these, very wealthy people who were involved in the space. Beth Moses, who just went to space with Richard, was my roommate.
Wow.
On the
Wow.
first time. She's like, oh, we might go to space in a few years. This was 2014, 15. So it was just a very special thing. And I felt that showed me what it looked like in the real Silicon Valley. I had been in the Silicon Savannah, and yes, I had worked in banking, but I had no knowledge of what really happened in San Francisco and the kind of money and the kind of prestige and the knowledge. And that was just like hugely inspiring and eye-opening. And I met some real heavyweights who showed me what a business could be. And when I showed them my little numbers and my plans, they were like, how about you make that 100x? And that just really was a motivator. And I'd say being part of that community, I got a lot of flack early days. Oh, because of the crypto, you got this and that. You know what? Cool. It shined a light where there wasn't. And they were very excited to go places where other investors weren't. And, did it give us a leg up? Definitely. But, how else were we going to attract cash and capital into that Nairobi scene? And it was a really special time. And I would say those kind of things, when people go into incubators or people get connected and kind of plucked out of their surroundings and they get taken up to a scholarship program or some kind of thing out of where they are, and they learn about what's out there and they get access to resources. And I went 4 more times. And then eventually I brought them to Africa, and we had one of the summits at Branson's property in Morocco. And, I introduced a lot of heads of state at that point. And by that time, our business was in a big place. A lot of my investors came from that group. So, that kind of cohort, that kind of community, ours was global, was very special. And I think that was definitely one of the catalysts which helped drive our business forward.
No, that's really interesting. So maybe we get to see you on the next flight.
No way. I can't go on like the pirate ship at Legoland. It's so too scary for me.
I can't believe you're actually going to say no to something, Elizabeth. I thought you would try anything.
No, I'm a whip with heights.
Okay, well, that's pretty high. So, but going back to Asa, so you started, or BitPesa, which now became Asa, it's evolved a lot from your early days, right? In terms of this providing, matching orders, as you said, personally doing it, whether it was euros versus some local currency. Well, I guess that's central to the business, but maybe just to talk a little bit about how the journey from BitPesa, that crypto focus, to now being licensed in so many jurisdictions and as a finance, how that's evolved.
Well, it's the same story. It's all about liquidity, which is not like a sexy thing to say. But for people who work in remittances, you understand that deeply. Right. It's all about the ability to flow, for transactions to happen. And what do you need for liquidity to happen? You need float, you need 2 sides, you need providers, you need trading, you need the ability to live and to breathe, right? Liquidity is the air we breathe in transactions. And in the early days, it was, how do I make this trade? How do I get access to dollars? How do I get access to euros, to South African rand? How do I get those shillings that I need? And how do I get them in the place I need them? The bank account I need them, or maybe on the M-Pesa platform. So it was always about that. Even the crypto was, how do we use crypto to get Canadian dollar? How do we use crypto to make a payment to China from Kenya? So, the crypto was a bridge. It still is. 10% of our volumes go through crypto as a bridge. Now it's more stable coins than Bitcoin. But it's the same. And so it's all about liquidity. And then we always say, she with the most liquidity wins. To win liquidity, you have to have liquidity. So It's just like, in German we say Teufelskreis, a devil's circle, like how do you get the big clients? How do you get those trades if you don't have any to start with? So you just got to start small and build that book. And when we started in Kenya, we had a little bit on both sides, take a little risk, get some more, take some more on this side, take it out. And then you slowly build it to Uganda, to Nigeria, get that first big client. And you're like, wow, we did a $5,000 this month. Now we did 100 million easy a month. And it's, I'm smiling from ear to ear now, but those early days, we thought, are we ever going to do $100,000 in a year? Are we ever going to make, $10,000 of revenue? And, it's so rewarding to know we've built it brick by brick. And I think you have to really think big, and you have to just not freak out. And one of my favorite investors, Tim Draper, says, put the blinders on. Don't even mention your competitor's name. Just brick by brick, brick by brick. And I think, you know, when I think, how am I going to handle everything? Or how am I going to manage this acquisition? Or how am I going to manage the family and the work and this? I just think, what do I have to do right now? Where do I put my foot next? What is the next brick? And if you think about that, you really can achieve anything. You think, you know, don't be scared of just one more brick, one more foot, and make sure that every brick you lay is straight. Every step you take has a USP, something unique. It provides, you know, you're constantly thinking about competitive advantage, diversifying risk, mitigating risk, and really pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So you don't want to just copy your neighbor. You can't copy your competitor. You have to add value. You have to retain clients. You have to show them value. And if you think about that, every step you take, if you think this adds value, this differentiates me from my competitors, and this is not increasing risk, it's reducing or mitigating risk. I think you know you can't go wrong.
No, I think that's right. I think staying focused. I mean, it's so easy in a startup to chase the next shiny thing, isn't it? And just to run from one place to another in that desperation of revenue. I think we've all lived through it and paid the price. But that's really interesting. I mean, let's talk crypto. Both you and I are big fans of crypto, and it's back in vogue again. But more from a payments perspective, right? I mean, if you look out, 5 years is way too long. So let's say in the next year or 2 years even, I mean, we're going through that maturity stage. I think regulations are going to come in, which I think is a good thing. How do you see that landscape changing? And do you see crypto really becoming a consumer proposition? Or do you think crypto is still would be better in terms of the B2B liquidity where, you know, for now, information and value can move in sync, which is not possible in the traditional world?
Well, every single person I know, every company leader, retail, government, institutional, has a crypto play. Every single person. Even the most conservative financial institutions in Central Europe, you know who I'm talking about, who were like, never, they've got something up their sleeve. Every single big corporate who laughed in my face years ago is launching a coin or blah, 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 or trying to figure their head about what they're going to do next. Everybody's thinking about it. I don't know anybody who's really holding out anymore. So there's a lot more to come. And a lot of people have no idea what they're doing. So there's going to be a lot of messy, ugly product, but what's new? That's number one. Number two, I'm obsessed with efficient settlement, efficient, you know, processing, liquidity, like we talked about, treasury products. And it just works, right? Not to sound like a girl, it's like if the shampoo works, buy it. You know, it's not that complicated, you know, but what if and how? And it works, you know, let's just use it. So my clients are like, you know, the big ones are like 1 year process, thinking how would it look, fund flow, freaking out. I go, let's just trade it once, see what it looks like. And they're like, oh, wow, that was easy. Wow. Well, look at that. It's, you know, after 2 p.m. cutoff time and we can do $1 million settlement. Wow, how liberating, you know, and guess what? All the compliance is still there. You know, I just tried to buy crypto on PayPal to check it out. They're like, no, too high of a limit, da, 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 da. Compliance is everywhere in the world of crypto. You can't do anything anymore. And you never really could without compliance. So the compliance is fake news. The real situation is getting your brain around doing something new. And guess what? That's how all the best innovation happens. And once people try it, I don't know anybody who's gone back and says, you know what, we're not going to use stable coins anymore. No, they're like, let's push more through this. So I think for settlement for B2Bs, 100%. And then on the retail side, this, in addition to the supply, everybody like going to be pushing out products. Every young person I know has some on the side. Like I even hear some like dorky, you know, middle-class regular people here in my neighborhood, like whispering about it, talking about it. My kids are like, hey, that's a Bitcoin t-shirt, you know, who went on vacation. They see the advertisements, like, Mom, it's your thing. You know, they think all the Bitcoin signs are me. So, I mean, we see it everywhere. And, you know, every bus now has a Luno ad in London. So it's here to stay. And I think we have to think about like an asset class. It's very fun. It's very easy. It's accessible. You have the on and off ramps now with PayPal and the cards coming in. So why not?
No, I agree with you. And it's fun, being at a restaurant last week and just listening. I think there wasn't a table that wasn't talking about crypto in some conversation. But it's funny. I mean, I had a conversation with a banker yesterday. I won't say who it was, but just that stigma that's still attached, which is, this is used by the dark web. And I'm like, come on, guys, the total market cap is less than 2 trillion, which is less than the entire market cap of some of these big companies. And are you telling me that the traditional, it's a financial system. It's going to be used by bad guys like any financial system. But let's look at all the stuff that is good that it can do.
I worked at a Swiss bank. Do you know who was on my client list? Let's just say they were military leaders.
Right,
like,
right.
Give me
right.
a break. Come on. Again,
Exactly.
that's fake news. And like, I
Yeah.
think what's the real impetus? Oh, what's the real barrier is that there wasn't a lot of good marketing people involved. So it was very wonky. It was like a little bit techy. It was like Reddit, like it's not for
Right.
everybody. A lot of information, great place to be, but not everybody loves the interface. So I think we had to work on that. And, even today I was reading Neeraj, who works for Coin Center, quoted in CNN. And, we knew him back when he was like just on Twitter, like freaking out. And now, he's mainstream and there's a lot of that. And I think we've come a very long way. And there's a long way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's close by talking about what's next for Elizabeth. Is it continue building Asa? Is it some, go sit on a beach? I know the two things are not mutually exclusive, but where do you see yourself, let's say, next 3 years?
Yeah, well, hell yeah, we're not done yet. I'm taking this all the way. I mean, somebody just said, well, I'm like running a investment team, and someone mentioned your name, but everybody else said she'll never exit down. I mean, so everything that I've been through, everything that I've shown, we have big plans. We're building big things, and we're well on our way, but we're not there yet. And this has always been a very big play. And I think we just acquired our second company this year. And there's not a lot of big fish who are good at acquisitions. And we did the acquisition in COVID, and we sent a team down, but most of it was done remotely. I don't know a lot of companies my size that have such streamlined onboarding of employees and culture, indoctrination, and management of distributed teams. We were really good at that. So it's roll-up season. And so I'm very excited to keep going on that front. That's one way we're going to be growing. 2, we have a very strong internal engine in terms of our product and our engineering and what we've been delivering, and that's just getting better and better. We've invested heavily in that. So we're seeing, a lot of customers come to us dissatisfied with the other product out there. And, that takes time to build, and to win customer good product takes time. And here we are. So, we have a lot more upside to capture on that. And I think when it comes down to who's been around, who's been listening to the customers, who's been learning from experience, we're just hitting our stride. So I think the next 3 years are going to see us grow in a very big way. We've just got into the growth stage, and we have a lot more upside to capture.
No, that's great. And before we close, still sticking with your 100,000 prediction for this year on Bitcoin?
What did I tell you? End of August, uptick happens, back into September, everybody's back at their desk from vacation. They're all thinking, how do I get on vacation more? They want to have wild, high risk investments. They all start. And then the run up to Christmas, we always see it every December. So
yeah, no, that'd be great.
A little bit less confident, but still confident.
No, I think we'll get there. But no, look, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time. I know we can carry on for hours, but really thank you so much for doing this, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thanks so much. All the best.
Thank you.